my dog is barking, please ignore him. He's being a brat this morning. It's 5:30 in the morning, and he thinks that's an excellent time to bark like a lunatic. But anyway, since we are about 5 days away from the beginning of Preptober, and the countdown is going to NaNoWriMo at this point, speaking of which, I have an actual countdown on my website to Nano, if you're interested. Shameless plug at the beginning. But I just thought it was really fun to put that on there. But on topic, since we're about 5 days away from Preptober, I thought it might be fun to do a video on how to come up with story ideas in case you happen to be pulling a blank this year and you don't have any stories that you actually want to do, and you need some help coming up with a story idea. Now, I'm going to be referencing 3 different ways that I have actually used to come up with stories, and we will go from there, and I'll give you the example of how I ended up using them. So the first way, and this is the way that tends to be the most fun to me, is thinking of a scene that would be fun to write. One scene, or like one event in the book, maybe not even a whole scene, just like one event. That would be fun to write, and then building up a story from there. Now, usually to me, this comes somewhere, it's usually the climax. That's what scene I think of. And then I think, how can I get to that climax? And then how will I resolve afterwards? And then I end up building a whole storyline from there. That's what I ended up doing with my book that's now in its 2nd draft. It's on its 3rd draft now. I'm just waiting for stuff back from Critique Partners. I wanted, and now keep in mind, it might turn it into something completely different from that scene. You may not end up using that scene, but it'll give you ideas. Because that's what happened with me. I wanted this scene where somewhere along the line, this father had gone out on a mission, and it's been a while since he's been gone, so he doesn't really look as much like himself anymore. And he has, through magical means, forgotten his family, like forgotten what they look like, forgotten their names, so on and so forth. And I had this kind of idea that he might be an artist or something, and when he was first forgetting his family because of this thing, he used to draw pictures of them to try to remember them and keep them in his mind, but he had an injury happen that made it so that he could no longer draw pictures of them, and he had this one photo of them that he kept nearby, but that ends up getting lost or stolen by our bad guy. And then the bad guy, basically the scene I had originally in my mind is that the bad guy had kidnapped his kids from back where he was, brought them there, turned them against their father without them knowing that it's their father. So neither of them know that they're fighting each other, and the father doesn't know that these are his kids. The kids don't know that this is their father. They just think he's this really bad guy, and they end up fighting and like trying to kill each other. But then the kids end up escaping, something breaks up the fight, and the bad guy ends up like sending them back home. Now the guy who was there can't get back home for whatever reason, but he ends up finding that photo again and realizing, oh my gosh, those were my own kids. I was trying to kill my own kids, and then like tragic ending. Now I didn't end up going with that, but it gave me all these ideas, and it really just like turned into this whole thing. I mean, I'm on my 3rd draft of a full-length novel. It's at about 72,000 words now, all because of that one scene idea that it turned into. The other idea that's kind of fun to work with, that I haven't done a lot with yet, but I will say that it did make ideas come to me really, really quickly for the basic plot of what I wanted to do, is using a first sentence prompt. The first sentence prompt, now I didn't get this from somewhere, it just kind of came to me while I was driving, is somebody saying, now I may not get this right, but somebody saying, he told me we were never here. And by the end of such and such a time, I almost believed him. Almost. I don't remember what time period I ended up going with. I've got to work out that story more before I know what time period to plug in there. But I thought that was a fun kind of twist, because it's like, what do you mean you almost believed him? Like, Anyway, I thought that was fun. And I ended up coming up with this whole like story, which I haven't fleshed out fully yet. I haven't outlined it. I just have like the basic plot points where this kid has bullies at school, like this teenage boy, maybe he's like 14 or 15. And he has bullies at school. He goes through whatever. He's kind of a spoiled brat kid. And he has rich parents. And he has bullies at school that don't like him because he like doesn't pull off being the spoiled brat kid very well. And we establish that. And then we move into later, we find out he likes to do graffiti and like street art. And he sneaks out at night to do that. But once when he's sneaking out at night, he sees his bullies from a distance. And they're also out at night doing stuff they shouldn't be doing. And he hightails it home. But on the way, he crosses a street without looking and he gets hit by a car. And he gets rushed to the emergency room. And when he wakes up, he gets taken home and everything seems very normal at first. But with his house, like things are progressively acting weirder and weirder. Like there's like little weird movements that he sees out of the corner of his eyes, and things are getting moved around or disappearing, or like kind of glitches in the Matrix type things. And he starts believing that his house is haunted. Now his parents, when he tells them about it, and they're acting a little weird too, tell him that they think it has to do with his head injury that he got in the car accident. So they take him into the doctor, and the doctor wants to put him on meds and this, that, and the other thing. And he's like, no, I'm not crazy. Like, I'm seeing these things. And then one night he wakes up and he sees like a man in his room, but it's like, he's like semi-transparent. So he thinks it's the ghost. And the ghost tells him, I was never here. And then like leaves, and he's like, holy shit, I like totally saw this ghost. And throughout the progression of the story, he ends up making friends with this man. They end up becoming close friends, and this man and him have a connection where they talk about things, and it helps him process some emotional issues he's going through, which I haven't come up with yet. But then in the end, he ends up finding out that, and the audience ends up finding out that this is actually a futuristic setting. I didn't really establish that earlier. I don't know how I would pull that off, so I might have to change that. But this is actually in the future, and he's been hooked up into a simulator for a very, very long time. He's now older. He's like a full-grown man now. And he's been hooked up into a simulator, and what he was seeing with his house glitching out and seeming haunted is that the simulation had bugs in it, and they weren't working right, and the guy he saw was a tech support guy who basically had to go in to try to fix the glitches. And he wasn't supposed to be seen, but then once he was, he ended up talking to the kid, and they ended up making friends. And I kind of toyed with the idea of him not even being a real tech guy. Like, he made friends with this guy, but the guy is actually literally, he is a ghost, but he's like a ghost in the machine. He's more of like an antivirus software. So he's not a real person. So now that he's out of the simulation and he's woken up, his friend is gone. For some reason, I like love the idea of tragic endings in theory, and then I never actually do them. But that was all that came from that one line that I came up with, which is, he had said, I was never here. And by the end of such and such a time, I almost believed him. Almost. Like, so that's one idea you might be able to try. I'm sorry, my dog is like going nuts. I think people are walking their other dogs at this early hour, and that's what he's going crazy about. But my third and final idea that I have for you, which I used in my current Western one, which by the way is undergoing some changes because I realized there were some major plot holes, and I think I'm going to make it a sci-fi Western because that will fix all my plot holes and also put me on a little bit more familiar ground, and I wouldn't have to worry about historical accuracy as much because I was freaking out about that and I didn't want to deal with it. But anyway, so the third idea is to pick 3 things that you find interesting and find a way to put them in a story. Now, in this case, I'll give you an example of how I did that. I thought it was a super interesting piece of trivia that geisha in Japan sometimes worked as assassins and would kill their clients. And I thought that was kind of interesting. And I'm like, ooh, like prostitute assassins. That sounds awesome. Not that geishas were like really prostitutes. We don't want to get into that. Don't get into semantics, but I thought that could be applied to like Old West like brothels and stuff, and I thought that would be cool. I also like I love vigilante type things. I love Dexter and stuff. And I was like, what if I combined some sort of vigilante thing? Like they aren't like assassins working for somebody else. Like it's what they want to do type thing. And then I'm like, I like the Old West. So I was like, what if I did this all in the Old West? That would work. They have brothels and the women... Ugh, I hate how the women are always portrayed in movies where they're these giant wuss bags. It's like, really? You think women living on the frontier out in this tough, scary-ass place are going to be these wusses who always have to, like, go hire some guy to hunt down somebody for them? It's like, I'm pretty sure most of these gals learned how to use a rifle because they kind of had to. But, anyway, I'm biased there, and I'm a little sick of Westerns always having to have some long drawn out sexual assault scene. And it's like, great, now I can't watch this movie, or now I'm going to be running to the bathroom to wash my hands 50 times in like a hyperventilating state. Anyway, but I'm not going to get into that. I already got into that, but I'm not getting into that. So anyway, the three elements I combined there was the idea of like assassin geishas, Dexter, to where they aren't like working with other people, they're actually doing it because they want to, type thing, and the Old West. Now I'm ending up changing that because I'm still gonna make it. I think I'm still gonna make it kind of Old Westy, but more like science fiction Western, where it's like a different planet. So kind of like. Well, I can give you 3 examples right off the top of my head if you're having a hard time thinking of what that would look like. Firefly would be what I would call a sci-fi Western. Star Wars, A New Hope is definitely sci-fi Western-y. And I don't know if you've read this, but Robert A. Heinlein's Time Enough for Love. If you have read it, then your eyes probably fell out of your head because it's like that thick. But it's really good and it's really interesting. But there are elements in there that also have like scenes that are kind of sci-fi Western where he's on a different planet, but it's very much set up like the Old West. So I think I want to try to do it like that because it'll solve like literally all my plot holes and also put me in a little bit more of a familiar realm to what I know how to write and what I usually read. So there are 3 ideas for you. This ended up being a really long video, so I'm sorry I got off on rants. But hopefully something in there gave you some ideas if you're pulling a blank, because Preptober is almost here and we need to be able to jump right into it so that we can get ready for NaNoWriMo and get our word counts. So everybody have a great day. I will talk to you later. Bye.